Good morning, Canopy. Merry 2 days after Christmas. I hope and trust you had an amazing holiday with your family and friends and that you are currently resting and recovering and preparing for a new year. As you know, if you're watching this video, we are not having a service in our parking lot this morning, but we will be gathering back here next Sunday morning in the parking lot at 10 a.m. for an all-together gathering. We hope to see you there. Instead, we figured that this weekend you might need a little bit of extra time with family and friends, or possibly time to recover from being with family and friends. And so we're doing something this weekend that we call Church in a Bucket. And this video is not going to be a long online service. Instead, we're just going to explain to you what Church in a Bucket is all about. And essentially, it's all about looking back and looking forward. And this is something that's really, really important in the Bible, something that's really important to God, that as we move forward into the new, we do so on the basis of remembering who He is and what He's done for us. So I'm going to read to you a psalm that I love a lot that's all about looking back as we move forward. It's Psalm 136, and it tells the story of the Exodus, which is a story that, as you know, is important to us here at Canopy. It's where we get our theme, that we are a church, a family of house churches learning to live free. That comes right out of the Exodus story, and Psalm 136 is a retelling of the Exodus story, and I'm going to read it to you now. It goes like this. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods. His love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. His love endures forever. To Him who alone does great wonders. His love endures forever. Who by His understanding made the heavens. His love endures forever. Who spread out the earth upon the waters. His love endures forever. Who made the great lights. His love endures forever. The sun to govern the day, His love endures forever. And the moon and the stars to govern the night, His love endures forever. To Him who struck down the firstborn of Egypt, His love endures forever. And brought Israel out from among them, His love endures forever. With a mighty hand and outstretched arm, His love endures forever. To Him who divided asunder the Red Sea, His love endures forever. And brought Israel through the midst of it, His love endures forever. But swept Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea. His love endures forever. To Him who led His people through the wilderness, His love endures forever. To Him who struck down great kings, His love endures forever. And killed mighty kings, His love endures forever. Sihon of the Amorites, His love endures forever. Og, king of Bashan, His love endures forever. And gave their land as an inheritance. His love endures forever. An inheritance to His servant Israel. His love endures forever. He remembered us in our lowest state. His love endures forever. And freed us from our enemies. His love endures forever. He gives food to every creature. His love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of heaven. His love endures forever. One of the things I love about this psalm is the way that it chooses to tell the story. The stuff that it chooses to focus on. You know, I was at a church before coming to Canopy called Rock Harbor. And we would often, after we would do an event or a service, we would sit down together as a team and we'd debrief that event. And I thought that was really valuable exercise. And over the years, we tried out all sorts of different methodologies for debriefing our services. You know, we had the system that we called greens, yellows, and reds, where we would try to say greens were what were the great things that happened. You know, yellows were sort of things that maybe need to be tweaked a little bit. And reds were things that should never happen again in the context of that service or that gathering. We tried, you know, the strengths and weaknesses. We tried what's working, what's not working, what's missing, what's confusing, all sorts of different paradigms to try to debrief things. And I remember one time after a service, we were sitting down and we all had a feeling that it hadn't gone well and we weren't really sure why. And we tried all the different methodologies and we were wrestling with how to wrap our head around what we were feeling. And somebody just sort of said, hey, how about instead of trying to tweak and change and improve and modify, how about we just focus on what God was doing and how we can partner with Him in that work? And I love that way of telling a story. That's what's happening here in this retelling of the Exodus story. You know, if we read the book of Exodus, there's all kinds of stuff that happened, and it's all important, and I'm not saying we should forget about it or ignore it, but when the psalmist here in Psalm 136 undertakes to tell the story, what he does is he focuses on the things that he saw God do. And on the basis of that, then, he has a paradigm for moving into the next because he knows who God is. He knows what He's done in the past. And with that in mind, he has an understanding that can help him move forward into the future differently. And I think that's just a really important way for us to approach 2021. 2020 has been quite a year. All sorts of crazy stuff. There's all sorts of ways that we can tell the story of 2020. And they're all important and they're all valid, but I think as a person, as a follower of Jesus, as my family, speaking for my family, and then as a church, I think we probably should get in a habit of saying, okay, it was a year. It was a crazy year. And without negating any of that, what did we see God doing? What was he doing in our church, in our lives, that will help us then move forward into the future with eyes to see who he is, how he's moving, and how we can partner with him? And that is what Church in a Bucket is all about. There's some items in this bucket that represent stuff that God has done in our church over the last year that we want to pay attention to. And so I'm just going to walk you through those very briefly here. The first thing you'll see, we have this sort of shredded brown paper. This represents all of our plans for 2020. Just kidding. It's just decor. No, we're going to start with this little bottle of sand here. So when 2020 started, before COVID hit, before we even knew that was a thing, we were in a series in the book of Exodus, which turned out to be prophetic, because Exodus is all about a group of people wandering through the wilderness, learning to live free, learning to live into who God has made them to be. And then COVID hit, and we realized that that's exactly what all of us were doing. We were wandering this extended wilderness season. We are still wandering this wilderness season, learning to be the people that God has made us to be. And so we transitioned our Exodus series into a series that we call Finding Freedom in the Wilderness. And that's what this represents. This represents our Finding Freedom in the Wilderness series. And the reason I think it's important that we have this little bottle of sand as part of our bucket here is that I think that's happened. I think that people have begun to find freedom in the wilderness. I know that my family has in different ways. It's been a challenging season. We found lots of things in the wilderness. Not all of them are pleasant or good. There's been a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of loss along the way. But I also believe that God has been making us more free, has been teaching us what it means to be claimed as his sons and daughters, has been teaching us what it means to be covered by his presence and his Spirit who is always with us, and has been teaching us what it means to be commissioned into his work in the world. And that's what this little bottle is all about. We have been finding freedom in the wilderness together. Let's keep it going. The second thing we're going to see here in our buckets is this little Easter egg, which obviously represents Easter. It's a little different this year, though, because Easter was supposed to be, as many of you know, was supposed to be our first Sunday morning gathering in Family Christian Church. Of course, COVID sort of put an end to that, but we decided rather than giving up on our plans to gather here at FCC, we would have our first parking lot service, and we hosted our very first drive-in Easter, which we had no idea would turn out to be a prophetic picture of the church we'd be over the next year. But it was an amazing time, and inside of these eggs, you'll find a little tiny car, which represents drive-in Easter. How cute is that? So, I look back on that Easter with fondness. It was not at all the way that we anticipated. It wasn't how things were supposed to be. But God did great things through it and has really used that experience to shape the church that we are now. And we have vibrant parking lot services right now that I love and I have a great deal of affection for. And I think it all traces back to parking lot Easter. The next thing that you'll see as you look in here is a little friendship bracelet, which no, I did not make. I wish I was this talented. Actually, I don't know if I do. I don't know that I would do that. But anyway, we have these little friendship bracelets, which represent probably my favorite thing about 2020, which is new friendships. So we have two significant new friendships. In addition to people who are new to our church, we have two new friendships with churches that are really meaningful. So all of you know that we have been over the past several months gathering at the end of every month with a Place for Worship church from Fullerton. Pastor Sheridan and Leslie McDaniel, who have become dear friends of me and my family, as well as of our church. We are so grateful for that relationship and just know that God is doing great things through it, and that, we're really looking forward to the future where we can finally, as COVID begins to relent, hopefully, we will be able to get out of our cars and get to know one another face to face more. I think there's some really fruitful stuff that will be coming for our church, for a Place for Worship out of that friendship. Also, another really meaningful relationship that we've established over this last year was with the church called Reunion in Santa Ana, that now is the Orange House Church here at Canopy. So many of you know that God brought Reunion into our family story through Pastor Mike and Jesse Rigdon and our relationship with them. And that Reunion is now part of Canopy Church, and we are so grateful that they are here, that you are here, Reunion. Thank you for being here. Again, my favorite thing about 2020, I think, is that God brought us new friends that are becoming family, and I love that so much, and that's what this friendship bracelet is all about. The next thing is this little disco ball. So after we finish the Finding Freedom in the Wilderness series, we're getting closer to current. We started a series in the book of Philippians, and one of my favorite verses in the book of Philippians is Paul talking about how it's possible, I'm paraphrasing here, for followers of Jesus to shine like stars in the universe as we hold out the word of life. In other words, the conversation we had and will continue to have as we pick up Philippians again in the new year is around how we become reflective of the light that God shines on us. So, there are a couple ways that we can go about this Christian life. One is we can be receivers of everything that God has done for us, and we just sort of drink it in and enjoy and ask for more. I call that the black hole Christian, somebody who sort of absorbs all the light and keeps it, which is not the way it's supposed to be. Or we can be reflectors. As God's light shines on us, we receive it and then give it back out to those around us. It's what I call the disco ball Christian. This is somebody who is constantly giving what they receive, and the secret here is obviously that you don't lose out in the process, that the disco ball fully experiences all the light that shines on it, but then turns around and reflects it back to those around. So this represents the call to be disco ball Christians. It represents the book of Philippians study that we started this last year and will continue in 2021, actually next Sunday. Looking forward to that. And the last thing that you will see in here toward looking back is a small candle, and this just represents the service that we had in the parking lot 2 nights ago, Christmas Eve. As we gathered together, the theme was "Let There Be Light." It's about a God who speaks light into the darkness. This is the first revelation of him we see in the Bible, and as Paul reminded us in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, he did that again when he sent Jesus. He spoke light again into the darkness, into each of our hearts, that he continues to speak light. And I don't know about you all, but 2 nights ago, Christmas Eve was one of my favorite moments, again, of the year. As we sat out there on a night where, as I told you at Christmas Eve, everything had gone wrong that day. It was sort of a microcosm of 2020 as the rain and the wind were trying to push us out of the parking lot. And then by the time everybody got here, it just turned into the most beautiful evening. God had brought the weather through and turned it into a lovely sunset, a still night. And we just got to worship together in the parking lot, light candles, and not just remember that the light of the world had come to us, but experience his light shining on us in that moment. And I love that, and that's what this candle is all about. And that's the different items that we have in our bucket, and I just think it's really important as a church, as individuals, that we look back over this year with eyes to see what God has done. Again, lots of ways to tell the story. But what are the things that we notice? These are the things that I notice God doing in our church, some of the beautiful things. And I look forward then, with that in mind, I look forward to next year. And I genuinely do. And I don't mean that just in the sense of 2020 was awful, I can't wait to get out of it. I genuinely say, if this is what God did in a year when everything sort of went sideways, then what's he going to do next year? I am anticipating great things. I'm anticipating God to move in powerful and profound ways in our lives and in our church. And I can't wait to see what he does. So what I'd like you to do today, sometime, Church in a Bucket is not just about me talking, it's also about you spending some time reflecting. So I'd like you to do sometime today, maybe it's after this video is over, is either with family or friends or by yourself in a journal, is just reflect on the year. And try to notice not what went wrong, not what went right, not how to change it next year, but what did you see God do? What were the ways that he was working in your life? How are you going to tell the story of 2020? And how will that shape the way you move into next year? So that's the looking back part. There's also a looking forward part, and that's what the bucket's all about. And to tell you more about that, we have our family pastor, Debbie Gwynn, with a very special guest. It's great to see you all. Happy New Year. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday in the parking lot. God bless you.
Hello, Canopy. I have a very special guest here today. Can you tell him your name, special guest?
My name is Elijah.
Yes. Elijah, how old are you?
6.
6. Well, Elijah and I get to look forward to what's coming in the new year. And inside your bucket, you got the 2021 bucket list. So Elijah and I are going to talk about that a little bit. We want you guys, instead of New Year's resolutions, we think it would be awesome that we do a New Year's, what did you call it, Elijah? A New Year's
revolution.
A New Year's revolution. So instead of a resolution, we're going to challenge our church this year to make a bucket list of experiences that we want to accomplish in the upcoming year. So Elijah, I'm going to read to you a special version of the Bible of the verse that we're going to filter all of our New Year's revolutions through, okay? It's Micah 6:8, and it says, "But God's already made it plain how to live and what to do. What God is looking for in men and women, it's quite simple. Do what is fair and just to your neighbor. Be compassionate and loyal in your love, and don't take yourself too seriously. Take God seriously." Elijah and I have been talking a little bit, and we've been talking about examples and things that we can add to our bucket list. So Elijah, what were some ways that we said we could act justly? Remember we talked about just means fair. What are some ways that we could act justly?
So, act justly, you should do, like, if you're saying, hey, like if you're saying, hey, can I play with you? And you say no, that wouldn't be fair.
That wouldn't be fair.
Because you're going to be all alone.
So one way that we could act justly would be to play with everybody, play fairly with everybody, right?
Yes.
And when we see something that doesn't feel fair, and you and I talked a little bit earlier about some people that are maybe homeless or don't have as much as us, what's something that we could do? What's something that we can do when something doesn't feel fair?
You should do, like, if you're being homeless, you should do, like, if people are carrying all their stuff, you should take it with them, because, like, let's say if you're like, you have a friend and you're having a play date with them, you should ride in their car. You should take their stuff in the car, and you should take the person in the car, so they don't have to carry all that hard stuff.
Yeah, that's a way that you could act justly. That's being fair, that you're helping somebody that's in need. One thing that I know a lot of people do is they sponsor a child. So they see maybe a developing country where children don't have as much, and you can sponsor a child there. There's all kinds of ways that Canopy is going to be taking care and helping people. So that's one way that we can act justly. When we see an injustice, then we do something about it. The next thing that it talks about is loving mercy. So the next item that we want to put in our bucket are example of ways that we will show loving kindness. Is there a consistent new way that we can show loyal love? What's some ways we can show some loyal love?
Like if you want to like do love to God, you should like talk to Him. Like not it's like saying hello God. That wouldn't be very important, but if you're like praying, that'll be the most important He'll like.
Do you think God wants us to love other people?
Yes.
Okay, so what are some ways that we can show love to other people?
You should like saying, I'm doing all the work and you're just playing. Can you help me do all the work? And you say, yes.
Well, that's good. What about, we talked a little bit about maybe seeing some people that don't have as much as us. What if we did something cool, like made blessing bags that we kept in our car? We went to the store. What are some things that we could put in a blessing bag?
Like if they have all dirty clothes, you should put clothes in there, and you should give them a coin, and you should write a car, and it'll say there's like not too far from here. There's a store called Coin Laundry, and that's how they can get all their clothes done.
That's good.
And you should like give them some food like goldfish and granola bars and stuff like that.
Maybe
And
some socks and gloves, and it'd be super cool. Like something that a family could do is keep those blessing bags in the back of their car and then pass them out to people when they're driving around, people that they think might be blessed by getting those bags. That's another way to show love.
it's just like the bucket over here you're talking about. And yeah, and the bucket you're talking about, it's just like that. You can put it, let's say that bucket right there was empty, and you put it like some socks and clothes in there and food in there. Let's say that. It's just like that.
Yes. And then when you see it, you're asking for God to show you ways to show his love, to show mercy to other people. And so that's something that you can do. And then the last one says to walk humbly. So it says, make your bucket list. We're making a bucket list. We're going to give an example in our bucket list of how our families will work to have the right heart attitude towards God. How will you show him that he is the Lord of your life?
I'll say that like being nice. I'll say like if, let's say, like God, when he was born, he just had that junky old stable, and with all that animals. I'll just say, do you want to come where we live for us to have room, because we normally praise God.
Yes. When we walk humbly, we think higher of God's ways for our lives than our own ways for our lives. So we look to other people, we look to his word, we look to the Bible for that to give us direction on what to do. We look to, we talked about earlier a little bit about, have you ever had a pastor or a teacher or a parent that said, here's what I think God wants you to do. And you listen to that and do that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
My teacher did that.
Your teacher did that? And I'm sure your mom and dad have done that as well, right? Told you. And maybe even your older sisters have given you, and your grandma have given you some good examples of how God wants you to live. And you make a choice to do that.
And sometimes your friends.
Yes, and sometimes your friends. So in our bucket, we could put a little list that says we're going to pray daily and learn how to respond to God's voice. Listen and respond to God's voice. So we don't get to choose what happens in 2021. Just like in 2020, some things have been not so great, right?
Yes.
Yes. Like, do you have an example of something that wasn't so great in 2020?
Like, yeah, people like getting like this COVID, definitely the COVID, and people getting sick.
Yes, a lot of people getting sick. So sometimes we can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose the way that we respond and react. And so God tells us very clearly that we need to respond and react by acting justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly before him. So we want to challenge Canopy to make your bucket list. And let's find moments where we can check in with one another throughout the year and see how your family and how your church family, how your faith community is acting justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly in 2021. Thank you, Elijah.
You're welcome.